what if I just figured something out about myself on your show?
I love it.
You're such a good host.
I'm taking this in my therapy this week. Today's guest is a Grammy Award-winning and Emmy-nominated composer and songwriter. Please welcome to the Zoom, Jared Faber.
Hello, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Very well, very well.
Good. I know I already told you before we started, but this setup is unreal. I mean, how many guitars do you have?
I have almost as many as I need, but I still need a few more. A few different acoustic guitars, a few bass guitars, and then you paint with colors and different brushes and different textures. So, you want to.
Do they all have names, or you just call them like?
No, I don't name them like that. I don't name them like that, but
Uh, that's so cool. Yeah, well, thank you so much for being here. I know we're just meeting now, so I'm really excited to learn more about you. And obviously, your bio is incredibly impressive. So I'm very
oh,
excited to
awesome.
hear
Thank you.
how you've gotten to where you are. So first and foremost, where were you born? Where are you from?
I'm from New York, New York City, New York. But I'm living in Los Angeles now, and I've been out here. I've been here for a while. It was sort of back and forth for a long time, always trying to spend as much time back there. But nowadays, I'm LA.
How would you describe yourself as a kid?
I was probably really annoying. I didn't think that until I had my own kid who's not really annoying, but now I see other kids and I'm like, oh, I was like that kid, the annoying ones. But I guess I was, I'd like to think I was creative and probably just sort of living in a fantasy world in my head more than I was living in the sort of present.
Why do you think you were annoying?
I think that I think that I probably found myself to be charming, and, therefore, when little boys, believe their own hype, that it can be annoying. I think they're little charismatic fuckers.
Did that confidence come from your parents and family support?
I imagine it did, but it got squashed, as does happen. It's nothing like middle school and high school to like give you a little dose of reality and set you straight as to who you likely really are.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you're probably just as cool as you thought you were when you were younger, right?
I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to have any perspective on who you were when you were a child, right?
True. Were you always playing music?
Growing up, I always thought once I got into music and got serious about music in high school, I always thought that I came to it really late. I was like, oh my God, I wish I was doing this, when I was really a kid, because when I was in high school, I was at the High School of Performing Arts in New York City, and they were phenomenal, phenomenal musicians there. There were, students who really were very far along, who had already come into high school with a classical background, a jazz background. They were improvising over complex music. They were writing music. And I was just strumming my guitar, trying to learn songs. And so as far as was I always doing it, I wasn't really doing it, I was playing a little guitar starting around the fourth grade. I started taking some lessons, but I wasn't really into it. And, I sort of wanted to quit because it wasn't fun and it hurt my fingers. And, you
Yeah.
know, in the seventh and eighth grade, I started really starting to have fun with it. By the beginning of high school, I had realized that like that was really all I wanted to do. So by the time I was like 15 years old, that's when it just became everything. That's when I was.
What changed?
I mean, I think some of it is just developmental and just like literally physical size and dexterity to the ability to be able to play. I mean, look, certain kids, they do study in a very rigorous and disciplined way when they're very young. And I just didn't, I wasn't pushed in that direction, and I wasn't inclined in that direction, I'm talking about as a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old kid, I think kids that age, they have to be pushed in that direction. And I wasn't, but what changed was the moment I could start to play songs that I liked on the radio.
Mm.
And then it just became,
what songs?
it was the 80s. And I would say, it started out with like learning, it was the music of the period, but also like, probably I probably started by going backwards. I probably started by learning like Beatles songs and all of that, and like 50s rock and roll stuff. And then you start to notice that, oh, if you know these couple of chords or this chord progression, there's 100 songs you can play. It started to become fun. And then, yeah, into, I would go and buy songbooks of all the popular 80s songs and whatever. But I think it really clicked when I started playing with people, when I started making music with other people, and started meeting friends who also played, and we would jam together. And then it's like, that's life changing. It still is, because it's not mostly how I spend my time, is not in bands and whatever, but when I play with people and when I collaborate with people, when you have the moments where you're creating, not just collaborating, but when you're really creating simultaneously, making music together, it's magical. It's absolutely magical. And I think that's what hit. And then when I was a freshman in high school, there was a documentary that came out about Chuck Berry called Hail, Hail, Rock and Roll. And it's ironic in some ways, or odd that this movie would be the thing that did it. But I remember specifically walking out of that movie and saying to my dad, like, yeah, that's what I'm doing. I say it's ironic because that movie was about Chuck Berry, coming back to, I believe, Memphis, and playing in a theater that when he was growing up, he would never have been able to play in, let alone walk into, as a Black kid growing up in that town. And then he came back, long after he was a thing, and he, collaborated with Keith Richards and Etta James and Eric Clapton and all these people, and came and played this show. So somehow I saw that and I was like, well, that's what I'm going to do. Maybe not exactly, but, somehow that was very inspiring to me. But I think also the music, I was just like, man. And I think what I'm talking about, what I had said about the collaboration, because that movie was, every song he'd collaborate with a different artist, and they would cut between the live concert and the rehearsal footage and them talking about it and working through it. And it just seemed amazing to me, like watching how this person could play in that style and play with him and what it sounded like. And so
how did your dad react when you told him that's what you were going to do?
Oh, my dad was cool with it, actually. That's funny. Yeah, my dad always had the approach that you should go after whatever you want to do, but you got to do it 100%, and you got to treat it professionally and treat it like you would treat anything else that was important to you. But my dad was all about, if you're going to do it, go 100% into it, which is, not how, although my dad was supportive in that way, that certainly was not the general atmosphere. That was not the energy that I got from most of the adults around. And, I would say my mom was very supportive as well, but it was very uncomfortable for her. It didn't make sense to her. I didn't come from a background where we knew other professional musicians or artists or people in entertainment, and I think and as I said, now looking back on it, high school doesn't seem super late, but again, I wasn't a prodigy. I wasn't one of these kids who like everyone was looking at going, obviously he's going to be a musician. Yeah. I was sitting there strumming my Chuck Berry songs and trying to learn Beatles songs, and I'm going, I'm going to be a musician. And people are going, really, dude? Like, I mean, that's fine, but maybe you should learn some other things, What
was your response when that's what you were getting from people in your life?
I don't think I ever felt the need to argue with anyone other than my mom, because that would be a more engaged conversation. I don't know. I mean, I don't know why I thought it was reasonable. Probably because my dad thought so. you
Mm.
know, but I don't know how I really thought it would play out. I'll say this, as a little bit of time went on, into high school, I just started looking around, and it's a little bit different today. But at the time, just used to think, well, look, there's music everywhere. There's
Mm.
music absolutely everywhere. There's music in it every time you turn on the TV. There's music on the TV shows. There's music on the commercials. There's music. If people play in bands at parties. There's music in restaurants that you hear. There's music on the radio. There's music everywhere, and someone is making that music and getting paid for it. And I was super aware. I didn't think that I was going to be. I didn't have any dreams of being wildly successful. I'm not saying that I am wildly successful, but I'm just saying I didn't have like really far out dreams. I was just like, if anyone asked me, I said my whole goal, and it was my entire goal, was simply to make a living making music, whether that included teaching, whether that included playing at weddings. I just wanted to make a living making music.
So how does it feel to have achieved your biggest goal?
There's two sides to it. Like, well, there's probably more, but the overall feeling is it's definitely satisfying. It's definitely, you know, I've said it before. I've said it I say it to friends. I say it in interviews. I mean, every time I walk into my studio, to be honest, my reaction is not dissimilar to yours. I'm just like, wow, this is crazy. I can't believe I get to do this. I will say that would give people different advice today, as far as like, I would say, like, be specific about what you want. Because now I'm like, oh, if you're gonna ask the universe for what you want, be specific.
Mm.
you know
That is such
and
good advice.
you may not attain like all the way, and I don't know, I don't know, I only know how I did it. Maybe if I had said that I want to be whatever, like the biggest, most successful pop songwriter or film composer, and I landed where I landed now, maybe I wouldn't be as excited. Maybe I'd be like, I didn't achieve what I was going for. My goals were modest, which was like, I want to live off of music. That's all I want to do. I don't want to have a day job.
Mhm.
So I achieved it.
Did you ever though?
No, I mean, not since I was a kid, not really.
Wow.
In college, I did, and I found an opportunity right out of college that included writing music. I started working for there was a CD-ROM game developer, CD-ROM, if you know what those are. Back in the computers of the early 90s, took a compact disc that you'd put in the computer, and you could play a game off it. And got to work on some like animated games that were early video games, I guess. um and I was hired to write music and do some sound design and do a few audio related things. It wasn't 100% writing music, but I was writing music as part of it, and that was right out of college. And I just kind of managed to keep that going. Yeah, went one thing to another, and there's a lot of things that happened between then and now, but I never, I wasn't I wasn't waiting tables. I wasn't working in an office. I wasn't everything I did. I mean, sometimes I was broke. Sometimes I was like down to my last, I don't know how I'm going to pay rent. And then somehow something came in at the
Mhm.
last minute. It hasn't been like a super, uh, it's not always been a consistent flow, but I never had a job.
When did you start writing?
Um, when I was in high school, I started playing around with it. I wasn't taking it seriously as a direction. It was just part of like the basic, like I was starting I like recording music,
Mm.
and I started to get into recording, and it was, the technology was much more limited back then. We didn't have laptops. I had a 4-track tape recorder that we could overdub parts on, and I had a drum machine, and I had my guitar. And so in order to record something, you need something to record. So you can record other people's songs, or you could start, making up your own ideas. And so that started. And then I went to college, and I went to Berklee College of Music. And I knew when I went there that I wanted to study something, again, because I grew up in New York, and I was going to college in Boston. And I felt like if I was going to go outside of New York City to study music, spend money at a college, I wanted to be sure that I was learning something that I couldn't learn by staying home in New York, because there was lots of great musicians around. If I was just going to like be a guitar major, I felt like I'd be better off just staying in New York and studying with some of the best guitar players around, and going out and playing and, doing that. So I took a major in college that was, writing oriented, and it had to do with like, we were doing big band arranging, and Berklee is a jazz oriented school. So everything is from a jazz perspective for the most part. There's some classical music studied there as sort of par for the course, but their main perspective is jazz. And so that's where I really started getting into it. And then it started changing what I was listening to. And I was, listening to, of course, as I was going through teenage years and through college, starting to listen to more and more sophisticated music, because as I said, I kind of grew up on pop music, right? I didn't come from a classical background or jazz background. I was listening to the Police. I was listening to hip hop. I was listening to the Beatles, a lot of like 60s and 70s soul, whatever, radio music, everything that was happening, everything that I could hear on the radio. But as I was getting more and more into music, I was digging into jazz and just kept pushing. I think in those years, I looked for music to be sophisticated. I've later come back around to like, I'm neither pro nor con music being sophisticated or simple. I care about how music hits me and how it impacts other people. But, part of the learning process and part of that age, I think, is I was looking for more and more complicated stuff and how to expand. And I felt like the more I knew, going back to the career and the approaching it professionally, I felt like the more I knew, the more possibility I would have to make a living, because I didn't know how I was going to make a living. I'm in college, you can see the end of that line, that's coming. There's no job interviews for being a musician. There's no job to apply for. And although I seem to have gotten one, but you don't know. So I just felt like, well, if I know how to write charts, if I know how to arrange for different kinds of bands, if I know how to do these things, I could work. I didn't have my eye on scoring. It wasn't, I was aware of it. And there was a film scoring major at Berklee. I didn't take it. And I think that I didn't take it because I felt that it was, and it might not be the case today, and I might even have been wrong about it at the time, but my take on it was that it was somewhat technical, which is to say that I felt like I could learn how to do the technical aspect of doing music to picture the same way I could learn the technical aspect of recording and all those things, which there was also a major in at Berklee. I just wanted to study music. And then I would figure out all these other things, So that's when I started writing.
Wow. If most of or if all of the jobs don't come from a traditional job interview and application process, what do they come from? Just networking?
I wish I knew. Everybody wishes I knew, or that they knew.
Right.
That's the question. That's the question. They do come from a bit of luck. It's a funny thing, because every job that ends, I am sure I don't have the answer to that question.
Yeah.
In other words, every project I'm on, that after we do the run of it, we finish our however many episodes or a film, and we finish the film. I have no idea where the next one is coming from.
Yeah. But
I can tell you what happened for me, but
yeah,
it is not necessarily repeatable
right.
um, for someone else. And if you look at other people's stories, particularly people who are doing music for um, for visual media, my story is not, it's not uncommon, but still difficult to repeat, which is basically, somebody who I knew when I was young made a TV show and I got to be the composer. I mean, that's the short of it.
Yeah.
A good friend, my friend Emily Kapnick, although, it wasn't the very first opportunity I had, but that was really life changing. She created a show for Nickelodeon called As Told by Ginger. That's what moved me out to LA.
Wow.
I'd gone to high school with her. I've known her since I'm 15 years old. I've done now at this point many shows with her. She created several live action shows for ABC. Um, we did a show called Suburgatory. We did a show called Selfie with John Cho, and then we did Splitting Up Together was the last show that we did together. And those that has been a huge piece of my career, is just working with Emily. When we did, uh, you know, As Told by Ginger, which was the first, my first real TV show, my first real show that I was the sole composer on. I met people there, and some of those people, my friend Eric Casimiro was an executive producer on that show. I believe he was an executive producer. He was certainly a producer on that show. And he went on to do many other things throughout the years. And he put me on Tiny Chef.
Mm.
But I met him on As Told by Ginger, and he was sort of the real, between Emily and him are the reason I got on As Told by Ginger. It was Emily's show. She created it, but she was so young and knew that she didn't really have the juice to unilaterally say that I was the composer. And because Eric allowed me to be the composer, I was the composer. And I continue to work with both of them, you know, uh, and so, yes, beyond that, one thing leads to another. Now you start to meet people, you get one opportunity, maybe someone's familiar with your work.
Mhm.
Hopefully you do a good job and people like you and people go on to other projects. But had I not gotten my foot in the door with that, um, I mean, I'd like to think I would have found another way. I was already working. I was already starting to do things. I was already had done some music for Nickelodeon for some shorts for them. I was introduced to a friend of a friend who had put me on, ghostwriting for him. He was a composer, and
Oh,
he needed a
wow.
little extra help. So, things.
What does that look like, being a ghostwriter?
It's very common. A lot of composers, people who do what I do, if you're working on a show, sometimes even one show can be a lot for an individual to do, or sometimes, as is often the case, when it rains, it pours, which is to say, I'll have two or three shows going at one time, and then I'll have no shows. But when you
Yeah.
have two or three, you get some help. And so, usually the way that works, is that you're following someone else's style. If the sound of the show is laid out by the person who is hired on as the composer, and they've developed some themes and they've developed a sound, a palette. They've sort of gotten the ball rolling, and then they bring in their helpers. I mean, this is how it's been for me. I know there's people who work in different ways, and every, all of the most successful composers pretty much have teams at this point. It's very common. But yeah, I had an opportunity to jump in on something, and that was good. I learned a lot because I was really glad that I got to do that before I had my own show, because this guy who I worked for really kind of walked me through the process in a way. There was things that I saw him do, that just the mechanics of of getting something done.
As a ghostwriter, are you writing and contributing, or just kind of like, what do you do?
Oh yeah, he would give me a full episode.
Wow.
Yeah, because he would work on one while I worked on one. Like he might have two due at the same time, or he might have another show going on, that he had to give attention to.
Hmm.
And so I would do his show, I would do his other show,
Yeah.
and, usually, I would submit it to him first, and he would make sure that it felt right, and it felt like he could stand behind it, and it felt like him. And, in the beginning, he would have more critiques, and he'd show me what he would have done here, or not so much what he would have done, but like he might say, oh, when we have moments like this is how we play them, because
Hmm.
it's standard. He had already, established certain things. And once I knew, or sometimes, you just submit, and like amongst us, musicians, amongst the composers, we might really, really know, oh, I wouldn't have done that, or he does that than me. But
Hmm.
when you submit it if you're within, a certain margin of error, I guess, you submit it to the producers and directors, and they don't necessarily know who did it, and sometimes they hear something from the ghostwriter and they love it. And then they're like, yeah, keep doing that.
That must feel
Sometimes
good.
I mean, you hope so when you hire people. When I hire people, like, I want people to,
Yeah.
I want them to be killing it. Great, great.
Mhm.
You don't want to get the feedback that that doesn't quite sound like the show, or,
Yeah.
you know, but that generally doesn't happen. I haven't had a lot of that. A couple times, you know.
Hmm. Do you
Um,
produce as well?
do I produce as well? Yeah, I do. I mean, as far as producing music,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. So I would say I have sort of split my time between writing music for TV and film, and working on records and working with artists and producing in
Hmm.
that manner. And yeah,
Do you enjoy producing?
I think for me it's all one and the same. I do. Um, but it's even how I approach composing, like in the sense that I'm I'm always like going for a sonic thing. Like I want things to sound a certain way. I want it to sound like as opposed to simply writing themes, and um, it's like I'm coming at it from the standpoint of like a broad aesthetic, which I think of as that's more producing, I guess. And like, is this going to sound vintage? Is this going to sound glossy? Is this going to sound electronic, or is it going to sound, you know, more organic? Am I going to use all the acoustic instruments in my room, or is this going to be synthesizer?
Right.
Um, yeah, but for me, it's sort of all one and the same. Like it's like I can't write without producing. I don't know if I like what I did until I've made it have the sound.
Totally. So do you work with artists as well outside of like TV and film?
I do. I do. Yeah.
Very
And
cool.
and I love doing that. And I've found that it's it's a little harder. I'll be, to be perfectly honest, it's a little harder to keep the lights on just doing that.
Hmm.
But it's what I most enjoy.
Working with artists.
Yeah. Well, that is to say, making music that is just for the sake of music, as opposed to music for picture. Like there's a different satisfaction in it. I
Totally.
enjoy both. And like there's a collaboration with picture, with film and TV. And it's a great, like, I love the energy of working with people and making this like thing that's way bigger than what I could make, and being part of it. But when I make music that's just for a record, whether it's with an artist, whether it's a record that I make myself, what we're making in that case, it's just the music,
Right.
right? I'm not a part of a bigger project. I am the project, right?
Right.
Like we're making a record, and like what it sounds like is the only thing that matters, right? Like how, as opposed to, oh, it should be out before she says this, and let's
Totally.
make let's make it bigger when he closes the door, and
That makes total sense.
you know,
So you said you have a son,
I have a daughter.
a daughter. Okay. How old is she?
She's 11.
Does she listen to your music and watch the shows that you work on?
Yeah, yeah. My biggest critic.
I was gonna say, like, does she let you know what she thinks?
Absolutely knows me know what she thinks. She does. She does, and she's got a great ear, and she is often right.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, she tells me when she thinks something isn't going to fly, and she's
Like, what
often
would
right.
she say? That it's just not good, or
She'll just, yeah, like there's no kid gloves from an 11-year-old to her dad. You know what I mean?
true.
It's not like a producer who's like, we love it. Now let's see what we're going to change.
Right, right,
My
right.
daughter just looks at me like, no, no, dad. And I'm like, what? It's good. She's like, and then she'll be like, send it, see what they think. And I'm like, oh God, you're killing me.
Oh my gosh. I bet that her approval is even more adrenaline pumping than other people you work with.
It it's it's a funny thing, right? Like, because sometimes you go, man, you don't know, you don't have because you literally don't have the breadth of aesthetic, and you don't understand what the reference is that I'm
Right,
doing here,
right.
but it doesn't matter. It still is like heartbreaking. I'm like, oh, I want her to like it. I don't even, but you know what? It's probably even bigger than that. I don't care if she likes anything that I do individually. I just want her to think I'm good. You know,
Yeah.
as long as she just generally thinks I'm good, I don't have to knock it out of the park on every single thing. But
Oh, I'm sure you're the cool dad.
I
Among
I don't
your
know if I'm the cool dad, but I think she thinks I'm good.
Do you ever write songs for her or about her?
Um, More the other way around. She's written some songs that I've sort of helped her put
Oh my
together.
gosh. That's so
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah, it's fun. It's
So
nice.
she's musically inclined.
Yeah, yeah, but I think she's just a creative person, and whether music is ultimately it, I don't know. I think she just comes at things from a purely let's make something standpoint.
Yeah, that's
She likes to
beautiful.
make lots of things, and they're not all music.
Uh-huh. Since you didn't grow up with a um I don't know, music focused, like pushy childhood in that way, does it kind of change the way that you parent and support her?
I think that well, it's interesting. That's one of the things I've sort of learned. I thought would have thought, my God, I would have loved to have grown up with a dad who did this, because
Mm,
then I'd be so good. I'd be so far along. I'd have access to all of this stuff.
yeah.
But you know what? That's what I wanted. That has nothing to do with what she wants. I mean, it may. So I just try to take a broader approach and like have her. She has access. Of course, she has access to being in here and playing with my instruments, and she's got her own instruments, but she's into dance, she's into making clothing, she's into writing, and whatever else, whether it ultimately is I think it'll always be creative, but whether it's like classically creative in the sense of like artistically, or whether it's wherever she goes, and I can't really impose on her the uh the version of it that I think I would have liked for myself.
Totally. That must be challenging though.
It's very challenging. It's very challenging. I mean, you know, I think I'm more comfortable with it now, but there was a period where I think I was like, dude, what? Like, what do you mean you don't want to do this?
Yeah.
Like, trust me, this is the best thing in the world to do. She'll figure out what she wants to do.
Yeah. What has been the most surprising part of this career path?
Um, Two things. I'll give you a positive and a negative. The difficult thing, if I call it a negative, it's a difficult thing, which is that it's not always fun.
Mm,
it seemed like I said, I think it's the best thing. I love that I get to do this, and it's such a fantasy come true, dream come true. But the reality is it's it's very frustrating, and
Mm.
you're working with a lot of people, and pressure is on, and there are a lot of things where people feel like things are really, really high stakes. And projects cost a lot of money to make, and you know it's it's just sometimes not fun, and you're on deadlines, and you're working, trying to get music done as quickly as you can at a acceptable quality level,
Right.
you know and that's not, that in and of itself is certainly not the fantasy, you
Yeah.
know and you're so tied up in it emotionally. Like, if you don't feel like you're doing a good job, I mean, it's, as I think I've kind of made clear, it's like, it's kind of all I care about, right? So when I feel like I'm not doing a good job at music, it's soul crushing.
Yeah.
you know you
Mhm.
just feel like worthless. I'm like, I've done this my whole life and I'm not any good at it. That does not go away. When it's going great, it feels amazing, you know and I think that's just the creative nature. I think I don't know if who may or may not have said that to you, who works in a creative field, but I think you'd feel that way as an actor or writer
Yeah.
or
No, I get
director. It's like the
it.
day, yeah, I mean, whatever, when it's not going well, because you're like, if I can't even do this thing, I'm being given the opportunity to do it and I can't even do it. you
Yeah.
know
Well, I think
that's brutal.
also when you're making art, it's such a big part of like who you are as a person versus this thing is separate
100%.
from me.
That's
So
right.
it's your identity, which probably isn't the healthiest
No,
thing.
but it's inevitable.
Right.
It's
How do
inevitable.
you stay balanced and grounded while producing art and having it be your livelihood as well?
I don't know. I know about as much about how I'm going to get the next gig as how I'm going to stay balanced and grounded.
Very fair.
Um, you know, I mean, look, there are regular sort of human techniques that we all hopefully know about these days, from breathing to exercising to
Right.
stepping away for a minute to just pushing through, because if you've been doing it long enough, you also are aware that that feeling that you are going to get it done, you are going to find the solution, it is going to be fine, and it may even be really good. So just like shut down you know the negative voice in your head, and stop telling yourself those stories and just do it. You've proved that you can do it, so just do it. So there's that. But I was saying, you asked, the question was, I said there's a negative and a positive, and you said what was the question for? I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh, now I can't remember. Oh, the surprises of the career path.
Oh, well, but the real best surprise, or something that I hadn't really considered or wasn't trying to do when I started out, is that the friends I've made in music, and the people I've gotten to know, and musicians I've gotten to be around and befriend, and that are beyond even just the work I've done, just people I know, that I basically know them through the circles of music. And I always say that the only reason I do is because I didn't quit. Like,
Mm,
because I didn't quit, I have gotten to know like just phenomenal musicians and amazing people who are doing such amazing work, and who I can, some of them, count amongst friends, and sometimes they're just people who I've gotten to be in the room with.
yeah.
And sometimes people I've gotten to work with. That's that's really the thing. I mean, for me, it always comes down to other people, in terms of like the vibe. Like when we started out, and I said, once I started collaborating, or jamming with people, or making music, or being in bands, everything changed. It's like, oh my God, what you can do when it's not just you,
Yeah.
and what you can bring to it. But the energy that's created amongst humans, it's amazing. And so, yeah, so that's been the most magical part.
Hmm. Do you go to a lot of concerts to experience live music?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, the pandemic was obviously that really shut that down for a while.
Mhm.
And I've been back to seeing some music, and I mean, obviously it's we've had a little time now, but I just saw two great shows just in the past week, and at two different, totally different venues, one in a small bar and one in a theater.
Hmm.
And saw a bunch of shows this summer. Yes, the answer is yes, and it does feed me every time. And I particularly like it, like smaller, intimate kind of things where you feel like you're in it with the people.
Yeah.
You know,
Who did
yeah.
you see?
Well, interestingly, I was in New York this last week, and a friend of mine had tickets to the band Air
Hmm.
at the Beacon Theater. And Air was like, they were like this electronic kind of band that had a huge, huge records in like the early 2000s. I was like, all right, I'll go. I couldn't like name you one of their songs, but it
Right.
was super cool show. And then I went to a jazz show a couple nights later in a small bar in Brooklyn.
Hmm.
Two guitar players who I like very much. A guy named Mark Whitfield and Isaiah Sharkey, and like just great. And again, like just the energy, and like
Yeah.
just a lot of young people there, a lot of young guys with guitars, who showed up, who were obviously like super guitar music fans. But I love that. I was just like looking around and being like, yeah, man, see, people really like still care about it. Like
Hmm.
they still want to, they're at the age where like they're fantasizing about what they're going to do, and they're showing up for the show, and they're, you know, early 20s, and they got their guitars. I don't know why they have their guitars at the bar, but uh, I guess yeah, it was awesome. It was just great to be out and seeing music, and saw a bunch of shows this summer. Herbie Hancock at the Bowl, and
Hmm.
yeah, just a bunch of stuff. A lot of jazz. I still like to check out a lot of jazz when I can, but
Yeah.
especially when it comes to hearing live music, because I like hearing things like really created in front of me.
Hmm.
You know.
Totally. Yeah. Is that what keeps you going?
Yeah, I think just it's always the next thing. It's like everything I hear, I kind of want to do it, like I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I want to do that. Oh, they're making something awesome. I want to make something like that,
Yeah, for sure.
and I don't mean I literally want to copy everyone but it's just like it's all cool. And it's like I've done so many things stylistically. I've, definitely gone down a lot of different paths, and I love that. It's just, yeah. So every time I hear something that's just like even remotely interesting, I'm kind of like, oh yeah, how can I borrow from that? Can I use that? Is that something I can put into a score? Can I put it into a song? Can I, file that away for later? Like,
Yeah. And you have all those guitars, you can probably,
can do something,
yeah, make
at least
anything.
sell them.
Yeah, right. Um, what are your personal and professional goals now?
Hmm. Um, I want to just try to make some music that I really care about right now. Um, this show that I just finished, it's, really just recently wound down. And so when I'm sort of in between projects, I try to focus on making music that I want to make.
Hmm.
So I kind of am kicking around some ideas and just trying to like really make. And it's funny because of where music is at, like in terms of the business of music, the fact that I feel like there is so little business of music these days.
Yeah.
It's a little bit actually empowering in that, like, I feel no inclination to make music. I used to make music that I would think, if it wasn't for a show, even if I was doing a record, there was always a part of me that was like, well, this could get played here. This could get placed in this kind of TV show. I could license this for this kind of use, or I know that these kind of, whatever whatever the particular, there was always a goal. Right now, I'm like, man, no one's gonna do anything with your music, so just make the music you want. You know?
Which is what kind of music?
Um, it's hard to put it out there right now, but it will have some electronics, it will have some beats, and it will have some live playing as part of it. And it will be, that's sort of what I've just started to sketch things, and it's kind of hard to say
Yeah.
what it's going to be, but
Yeah.
it will likely be instrumental. And hopefully it'll be a little bit funky. And uh, I don't know. We'll see where it goes. We'll see where it
I
goes.
can't wait. I can't wait
But
to
I just feel like it just doesn't matter right now. It doesn't matter to me in the way that it has in the past. I'm like, just make something. Let's just like follow, you know, been listening to a lot of different things and just sort of see where that. And obviously, my eye is always on what the next project is going to be like that's actually real work,
Right.
or not real work, but real
Yeah.
work.
That's liberating though, to not feel the boundaries of an industry, right?
I just feel like you may as well, it's like the industry in all ways is in such flux as far as what TV shows are getting made and aren't getting made. And it's like, if you don't have a real like specific angle on making that happen, you may as well lean into your creativity.
For sure. What do you want your legacy to be?
My legacy,
Yes. Just, casually.
uh, I mean, I hope that people who know me just say I wasn't a jerk. You know, I don't know. That's too lofty an idea for me. I can't. You know,
Yeah.
I hope my kid listens to my music when I'm gone, and you know make presents positive thoughts and warmth. Beyond that, I mean, I feel like very few people truly have a legacy. You have to be great. I don't know. It's cool. It's cool. I've been part of things that exist. Even things that I haven't done. I've already been part of things that people reach out to me that they're fans of from 20 years ago or whatever. So that's wild. So I hope
Yeah.
that I continue to work on projects that people check out for some time. But I don't know about legacy. Just
Yeah. No, it's a big question. So
just be a nice human.
that's beautiful. Thank you so much for doing this. I
Well, thank
really
you.
enjoyed talking to you, and your
Oh,
story is very
likewise.
inspiring. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.